Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of What Just Happened here on the Big Red Nation channel. My name is Jason. Let's talk about it. Nebraska, Iowa. That was a bad loss. There's no way around to saying that, right? That was a bad loss. Um, Outside of Emmett Johnson absolutely being a beast, running for 217 yards, um, just maybe with this even this might be one of the best seasons for a running back in Nebraska and in a very very long time. Um, Others might have had a little bit better career overall, like a Rex or an Amir Roy Halou, but this year, for what Emmett Johnson has done, especially his last handful of games, um, is truly remarkable for what he's done for this season. Um, the fact that he didn't make the finalist for the Doak Walker Award is insanely criminal. And unfortunately, I think it's due because he is a Nebraska Cornhusker. And not just a Nebraska Cornhusker, but a Nebraska Cornhusker that's on a 7-5 team. Um, that sucks. That sucks that because he deserves to be not only in that conversation, but Jeremiah Love might be the best in the country, but he definitely deserves to be one of those finalists. But he's not, and that sucks. I think as far as the game goes, guys, it kind of went opposite of what I was hoping the game would go. Um, but like I said, whenever I was kind of coming up with my prediction, I said I was a little worried, and I felt more like the game was going to be closer to how the Penn State game went. But what I was hoping was, so far this season, we've never had two games back to back like we just had. No two performances so far this season. And even kind of a little bit back to last season. We never really followed up a very, very bad performance with another very bad performance. And we just did. We just did. I don't know what happened to our defense. Um, Again, we know what our defense is, right? We know that they can't really stop the run. There will be moments where they will stop it, and then we got to capitalize on that with our offense in those moments. And I don't think we necessarily did, especially coming out of the second half. Um, Even whenever special teams made a couple of bonehead plays, our offense couldn't capitalize. And maybe that has to do with TJ's injury, kind of playing with that nagging injury. And look, I will jump on this bandwagon that I've seen a lot of other content creators and Nebraska media kind of run with. And look, especially in the second half, once you got down to 30-16 or 33-16 or whatever the score was, why are you keeping TJ in? Uh, why are you keeping TJ Latif in the game? He's already got a hamstring injury. Like, you knew that. And I get keeping him in whenever things are still like up in the air, and as long as it's not like something that's really gonna be worse for him, why not? But like, if TJ Latif is your possible answer to next season, I'll probably get him out of the game whenever the game is no longer necessarily there. And especially whenever clearly, at least to me, it was clear that that hamstring was really bothering him. So one, his dynamic ability to go run with the ball was gone. And that defense knew it. And then you started watching his throws really look bad as the game went on. And I think is more as he kept feeling the pain in his hamstring. I think it really affected his throwing. So why not go to Gramstad? I mean, it's not like Gramstad is a guy that's just never played. He played a lot of ball. Yes, I know it's NAI, but okay. He still has a lot of experience playing college football at some level. Was it really going to be that huge of a drop off? Because going into the season, you were willing to run with Gramstad being your backup until TJ in the fall surpassed him. But in the spring, he didn't. You guys didn't go after any other backup guys, right? You guys were totally fine with Gramstad being the backup until, TJ kind of passed him in the fall. But then in several games where you could have pulled guys late in blowouts, you don't. I don't understand that. Again, I kind of thought that, we go into this game and just started making mistakes, man. Started doing things that we haven't really been doing in a while. And you can't do that against Iowa. I will always capitalize on it. The targeting thing on Jacory, that whole sequence there, seen a lot of people as I watch the different podcasts and stuff that I do talk about, if you're Jacory, you can't fumble it twice there. Well, he didn't fumble it twice. Okay. The first one, he was down and on his way back up, being rolled back up. Then the guy stripped it or he lost it or whatever. He didn't fumble it twice. He only fumbled it. He only muffed the putt once. Okay. And then whenever he went to go pick it back up, he got hit and then it flew back. And yes, it was targeting. Whenever all the announcers are calling it targeting, the rules analyst, former ref, Gene Steratore or whatever his name is, says, yes, it was definitely a targeting call. Guess what? It should have been called. It should have been called. Now, the only reason why I say that kind of changed momentum in the game is because of just it was that moment. That was the moment where Iowa went, we got you. You guys finally made that mistake. Now, yes, our defense then went on to stop them, right? And then our offense goes 3 and out. And then they go back, and then that's whenever all of a sudden all hell broke loose. But our defense started off that third quarter on the field so much that it was bound to happen. It was bound to happen. And again, in back-to-back games, I have no clue why. All of a sudden, our passing defense is garbage. I mean, we held guys like Brandon Sorsby. We held guys like Jaden Maiava. We held guys like, at the time it seemed like a much better accomplishment, but Bryce Underwood, right? We held these quarterbacks that are all pretty decent to Jordan Maiava and Brandon Sorsby, very, very good at throwing the ball and having good passing offenses, hold them to astronomically low passing yardage. Right? But then you can't even throw Aiden Childs in that. He had a pretty good game, but I would say we held Malik Maryland's quarterback. I can't think of his name now off the top of my head now. But held him to a pretty good low passing yardage. Wasn't like real low, but held him in check somewhat. But then when you play back-to-back bad throwing quarterbacks, and they both have great games against us, and that's how they beat us, by throwing the ball. It just doesn't make any sense. Was there a start? In the last couple of games, was there a little bit of either players starting to maybe not believe in the DC, or did they try to focus too much on the run and just we're not calling defenses to put our guys in the right places to succeed for play action passes and be up there and really defend the pass well? I don't know. I really don't know. But man, that was rough. Since when, I've kind of thought this all season long, but now the season's over with and we can all kind of let some frustrations out and vent, right? We're almost to the uh, Festivus season, airing of our grievances. And watching two specific runs in that game from Heinrich Harburg just had me wondering how is it whenever he was the quarterback and a starting quarterback, trucking fools, running people over, looking super fast, going all over the place, running very well, looking like a running back playing quarterback, to whenever he is now being asked to run the ball from said quarterback position after being moved to being a tight end and working on your toughness and blocking and all this other stuff. Why is he such a weak runner? What are, all we've been talking about for a while, right? Is like, well, maybe it's just because they know what we're doing, so why not, instead of just keep going up the middle, how about he takes it and bootlegs around? Well, then he did that, and like all this open area, and he just runs straight for the one defender out there. And then that was like the one good like call up for us because there's no way he got that first down, but somehow they still called it a first and went, okay. And then towards the end of the game, like I think it was basically our last possession, runs the ball again, gets hit and fumbles it into the end zone, touchback. I mean, what happened? What happened to the runner we saw in Matt Rule's first year? That's why all of us had such hype going into this season of him being moved to tight end. And all of a sudden he just can't run. Like I don't get any of that. But anyway, I don't want to really stick to that, talk about the game too much, right? Because whatever, it's over now. Okay. It's kind of a sad way to end the year. We're 7-5. We still got, I think we're going to get in a pretty decent bowl game. I feel like it's mostly probably going to be the Vegas Bowl. Could be the Music City Bowl. But we'll have to wait and see. But I really hope that whatever bowl we go to, we put out a good showing and we play well. Hopefully last year's bowl kind of gives us a nice insight of maybe what we will look like going into this one. The only other kind of thing I want to talk about, though, that happened at this game was it happened before the game. And it was, I'm calling it Dylan's PDA moment. His public display of affection for this program, for these players, for these coaches. He's out there before the game, wheeling himself around in his Husker gear. He's pumping up the team. He's hugging coaches, doing all this stuff. And I think that's we haven't seen him do any of that, right? At all. I don't think it's a coincidence that after that report from CBS Sports happened, all of a sudden he came out and he was doing this stuff. So again, like I had mentioned, I don't think he was going anywhere. To be honest, I just don't see coming off of this injury teams be willing to pony up the money to get him. I just don't. I don't see that happening. Again, I can be totally wrong. I'm not saying I'm super smart and going to be right about this. But that's just from my view. I just don't see that happening. Again, I also see this as kind of his way of, instead of coming up to a podium and talking about it or whatever else. I think this is kind of his backward way of showing like, no, hey, look, guys, I'm clearly part of this team. I'm clearly part of the program. I'm not going anywhere kind of thing. Again, could be wrong. Could have been him just doing it just to kind of hush stuff until it becomes official that he's leaving. Who knows? But that's my thought. I think that kind of solidified in my mind that Dylan is not going anywhere. But that kind of leads me to one of my first things I want to kind of talk about is, let's say Dylan does. I personally believe after watching these 3 games, well, 3.5-ish games of TJ Latif since Dylan went down, I think TJ is a good quarterback. I think he can develop to be a very good quarterback. But with the status of this program and where it's at right now, and the development of this program under Matt Rule, heading into year 4, if Dylan leaves, does he look like a quarterback that's going to lead any Nebraska team to the playoffs? I don't. I really don't think so. I think he's got a lot of seasoning ahead of himself to really develop and become that player. So I think he's another year away, but we're going into year 4. This was the year that we had a lot of young guys playing. You know, the stat, over 38 players on the 2 deep were either freshmen, redshirt freshmen, or sophomores. That's a young team. Youngest team in the Big Ten this year. Right? Which is, again, a lot of people since this have kind of started harping back in on that year 3 thing with Matt Rule. Go back on any of the times, by the time he got to year 3, Matt Rule had a much older team by year 3. His biggest mistake, whether you want to actually call it a mistake or not, but just his biggest mistake in the development of this was keeping so many of the seniors and juniors his first year. If he would have been a coach that came from Baylor to Nebraska, I think it would have been different. I think he would have brought a bunch of his guys from Baylor that wanted to come with him, or wherever he would have been. If he would have been in a college, at a college campus before this job instead of the Carolina Panthers, I think he would have done what a lot of other coaches have done. Bring their staff, bring their players, or at least a good chunk of them. What kind of would have asked some of the guys to transfer, some of the older guys, because I want to get this program rolling. He didn't have that opportunity, so he wasn't really in a spot to tell anybody to leave this program. He needed the bodies, he needed the players. I think he just thought that he was still going to be able to develop it and get things going. And I think, unfortunately, it's kind of stalled the development of the depth in this program. Hence why, again, we can go to another topic I'm going to talk about here in a second, which is this year's recruiting class. But I think hands down for next year, now these certain guys that were struggling this year that are sophomores, they're going to be juniors. The juniors this year are going to be seniors, obviously, right? So we're getting a little bit older next year. Do you really want to kind of have them go through the bumps and bruises of having a, roughly true sophomore, first time full-time starter and TJ Latif at quarterback? I don't think so. And the way he played this year, I don't know if that's the right move. Again, I think he's got a year more of learning and developing, getting some different, getting his body in better shape. As far as like getting some muscle on him, getting some thickness to him to where he can take some hits in the Big Ten. I think that they would definitely need to go get a quarterback if Dylan were to leave in the transfer portal. Personally, right now, out of the quarterbacks that I know are going to be in the portal, I think Arizona State Sam Leavitt would be perfect. I think he would be perfect for a Dana Holgorsen offense and to play here in the Big Ten. Used to be at Michigan State, went to Arizona State. Of the year that he went to Arizona State, if you remember, he was one of the quarterbacks Matt Rule did bring in and looked into having transfer in before Dylan Raiola decided to flip and commit to Nebraska. Does he reconnect with Sam Leavitt? I think that would be a very good pickup. Another one that I've kind of heard some rumblings. I've seen him on some lists. But if this were ever to come to fruition, I think he would be my number one choice, and that would be Brandon Sorsby. I think Brandon Sorsby would be the absolute best pickup that Nebraska could hope for. Have him come to Nebraska, right? He's just up the road in Ohio. It's used to playing that Midwest weather. Come right in and be a senior leader, and I think would be a great pickup for Nebraska football. Outside of that, I'm not really sure exactly who else would be getting into the transfer portal. I think here in the next several days, we're going to find out a lot of people that will be heading into the transfer portal. Starting to see a lot go in today, especially with all the coaching changes that have happened today. So it'll be interesting to see. But yes, I do. If we find out Dylan is leaving, I think going into next season, you got to go find a quarterback. I'm thinking literally just go get a 1-year rental at the quarterback spot, but a senior leader that could come in, lead this team to try to go make a run, and at the same time be a mentor to TJ. Because, I think Dylan's really tried to do that, but at the same time, like, how much of a mentor is a guy just like 1 year older than you gonna do? How much more experience is he really diving into you? I think he's mentoring him in how to prepare, how to mentally do the game, because Dylan is very ahead of his age in that regard. But he doesn't have a whole lot of war stories to hand down to, you know what I mean? So that's I think would be the number one thing that I definitely came to realization of at the end of the game against Iowa, which is I don't think he could be your starting quarterback if Dylan were to leave. Let's see here. Made my list of all these grievances. I guess the one last thing that I will say about this Iowa game specifically is something that I kind of talked about in a couple videos now, and that is really at the end of the day what this game came down to was, again, how much more Iowa loves to beat Nebraska over how much Nebraska loves to beat Iowa. It's still not there. It's just still not there. Which is not. And we need to get some kind of edge to our program. And, it's just what has to happen. All right, so a lot of these next several topics and grievances that I'm going to kind of talk about and go over kind of come from, again, just my own personal thoughts on the season. But also a lot of these things are topics that I've heard be talked about on other radio, on X, on other podcasts, on YouTube shows and stuff like that. And one of them is kind of talking about, a big topic on everybody's mind is progress. And have we seen progress? Overall, I think yes, right? This program has seen progress since Rhule has taken the helm. I think this program is in a much better place than it was under Scott Frost. And I think if you can't see that, I don't know what to tell you. I think you're blind. I think I don't know. I just think you're lying to yourself. I think you're blind. But as far as has it progressed year to year under Rhule, there are different things that have, right? So our turnovers, We finished in plus turnovers. Now, not that our defense necessarily took a lot, um, but we didn't give up a lot of turnovers this year. And we finished in the plus in their turnover margin for the first time in a very long time. The other aspect is special teams. We've been so horrifically bad in special teams, even dating back through Scott Frost, that Mike Eckler came in and man, we're like one of the best special teams in the country. That's a huge improvement. Um, our wide receiver room, I think, has gotten insanely better. I think our defensive back room has gotten insanely better over the years. Um, I think there's aspects of our offensive line that's gotten better. There's a lot that hasn't. And that'll definitely be something that we'll be talking about in the days and weeks to come. But I think it is hard to sell progress after this season as a whole, especially after these last two games, because these last two games really put a sour taste in your mouth. And I brought this up in a couple videos ago too, and there really hasn't been a specific group or anything like that side of the ball that has gotten better as the season's gone on. Now, I just mentioned some things that have gotten better, but those were all pretty evident in game one, right? Our secondary was pretty good. We could run the ball. Emmett Johnson's pretty good. Our wide receivers played pretty good right off the bat. Special teams was pretty clearly good. And we were clearly going to control the ball better from game one. You saw all that stuff in that Cincinnati game. We still saw all those same things, even in the Iowa game, for the most part. But what you never saw was how any part of the team got so much better. And I know some people have talked about like the offensive line. Well, the last several games, we haven't given up as many sacks or blah, blah, blah. Sure, but there's two reasons for that. One, they haven't put TJ really in any position to hold on to the ball long enough to get sacked. And two, we've ran the ball with Emmett so much more than we did whenever Dylan was the quarterback. So there's a lot of things, like I said, that just we've not seen any position group or the team as a whole seem to get better as the season went on. They've kind of just been the same all season. And then on top of that, these last two games, like I said, put such a sour taste in your mouth. It's hard to sell progress because, a lot of people have forgotten now. Going into that USC game, a lot of us thought we were going to win that game. And we had the lead midway through the third quarter, ball in the red zone, looking on a very good drive, looking like we could possibly go up 21-6 and maybe start putting that game away. And then Dylan got hurt. And since that moment, outside of the UCLA game, people have looked at this season totally different. And again, if that doesn't tell you that Dylan should be the quarterback if we can keep him, then I don't know what to tell you. But this season has been looked at totally differently now. Because that's one thing that, the overarching gripe that I have with a lot of Husker fans and the Husker Nation and everything right now is we're reacting to this season, I think, harder than we did whenever we were the best 3-9 team in history. Like, I think as a whole, we were more positive about the next upcoming year after almost every bad 3-4 win season under Scott Frost than we just were under a 7-5 year under Matt Rule. Back to back, over 500 years or seasons, going to bowl games. And you have people talking about this season and this team and the trajectory of this program Like we just ended up the season 2-0 or 0-12. It doesn't make any sense. Look, I, I'm not sitting here saying we should be super happy and just accept whatever the hell we get. But this program will never move forward if the media and the fans and the podcasters and everybody else doesn't react with some common sense, with some type of reality and honesty. I mean, we had people sitting there saying, fire Matt Rule, blah, 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 blah. I mean, trying to make fun about the extension. What are you making fun of the extension for? The extension literally did not raise his salary $1. The only thing that added on his extension was now if he did leave, the school has to pay us more money. And if he goes to the college football playoffs, then he gets an escalator of $1 million. Which, if he does that, yeah, he should get it. I don't think anybody's going to complain about that. And for making college football playoffs year after year, what are you mad about the extension for? The extension does nothing. Just give him, 2 more years? Okay. It's just, I'm not trying to sit here and say either, though, that like we're just so close. If we just, change a couple things. No, I think there's some hard questions going into next year. But at the same time, we're a fan base that loves consistency. We're a fan base that says, you just can't keep getting rid of people year after year after year. But yet we're starting to become a fan base that will say that, but then also go, this person needs to get fired, 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 this person needs to get fired. To me, the only person I legit have a gripe with and thinks needs to be gone is Donovan Raiola. And I've given my reasons on that. And if you haven't seen those videos, the main reason is look at recruiting. Recruiting's not great. Look at the development. The development's not great. And then every year it's the same. They start off looking like garbage. They play pretty damn good the last 2 to 3 games of the year. And then all of a sudden we think that we're heading in the right direction. Whenever we start right back game 1 looking like this offense is garbage. So, and he's been here now 4 years. This will be his 5th. Going into next season would be his 5th year because he was here 1 year with Frost. And we've seen the same thing from Donovan Raiola. So, if you want to fire one guy, I think we have legit reason to gripe on him. Everybody else, like I've even heard people talk about how like our linebackers haven't done well. Like, okay, 2 years ago you were thinking, or going into last year, people were saying, hey, Dvorak could maybe even be our defensive coordinator. He's the greatest assistant coach on our staff. Now all of a sudden this year, people were like, maybe we should get rid of the guy. I mean, again, we got to be honest in our criticism, or else it just becomes white noise. It just becomes nothing. We just become a fan base that just bitches all the time. And I don't want that to happen to us. I don't want that to happen to this fan base. We're known as a very smart fan base for a reason. And, yeah, I guess I'll just go into that. The reaction of the fan base and podcasters and media and everything has just been, it's been a couple podcasts I've watched even since Friday's game. And trust me, I was livid after that game. I was very upset. Very upset. But you know what? Get through the night, watch the women win later on that night, and a really cool blackout against Penn State. And I just kind of let the emotions fully get out of it and really think about where the program's at and what's going on. And but then I'm watching some of these podcasts and stuff, and it's just like I had to turn some of them off. Like I can listen to criticism, but whenever it's just so blatantly just dishonest and emotional and just all over the place, like I can't listen to it. Like one thing I heard throughout all of them was Rule's gotta finish his podcast, and then he's gonna end that. He's got to end his McAfee stuff. Again, his podcast, yeah, all the interviews that he does, like with the twins that do whatever, the orchestra twins where they talked about runs of hamburgers, whenever he's had on Joey Maguire and some of these other guys, he does those during the off season. So it's not even during season. Again, the only part of those things they just during the season, I think some of it's, he interviews the players, and then what is like 30-minute segment with his buddy Cuz. Again, what's the difference? He's not putting any more time into that than whenever coaches did the Bo Pelini show, the Frank Solich show, the Tom Osborne show, blah, 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 for Husker Inside or whatever. No more time than what they would put into that. Right? So what does that matter? The Pat McAfee thing, he's on for 10 minutes. It's on for like a 10-minute segment. But you know what it does? It gets him on TV, and it gets him on a show that young people love. So he looks like a cool coach that's very personable that people want to come play for. And you're seeing it. You're seeing it come to fruition with the type of level of athletes that he's getting in the 27 class. He's even getting some pretty damn good ones in the 26, like a 5-star Danny Odom, defensive back, that's probably going to be playing as a true freshman next year, who will end up probably being a 5-star quarterback in Trey Taylor, a 5-star defensive back in Torrey Pittman, right? 4-star running back Amir Brown, Tay Ellis, another 4-star wide receiver. Now you understand, I'm not talking about a whole lot of offensive linemen. Donnie Raiola, that's an issue. But I think we're getting some of these top guys because of who Matt Rule is. It's not because we're winning, because we're not winning at that type of clip. We're starting to get better. We're definitely having better seasons than we ever had under Frost. But, I even saw some people talking about, oh, yeah, Bo Pelini wasn't so bad. Huh? Yeah, Bo Pelini was such a great coach, and Bo Pelini. Bo Pelini was good with Bill Callahan players. He got lazy in recruiting. Recruiting got bad. The talent got bare. And he just became disgruntled as hell with everything that was going on. Bo got us to a better place than where we were under Bill Callahan, hands down. Never going to take that away from Bo Pelini. He was the necessary coach for a certain amount of time. And he wore out his welcome, and it was time to move on. It was just unfortunate that we had a AD at the time that clearly sucked at his job and hired Mike Riley. If we would have hired a better option at that point in time, we wouldn't be sitting here like this today. I can guarantee you that. We always jump back to that and say, well, we shouldn't have fired this guy. No, yeah, we should. But the next hire was garbage. You had an opportunity and you dropped the ball. We fired Scott Frost like we should have. I don't think we're dropping the ball with Matt Rule yet. I just don't think it's going as fast as some of us was hoping or buying into. Again, we're reacting to a 7-5 season like we were 0-12. Now, again, I'm also not saying that this 7-5 was necessarily a good 7-5, but at the same time, I don't think it's like this like apocalypse thing. People are talking about, well, next season got a lot of pressure. If we don't make the playoffs next year, or go 9 or 10 wins, and Rule should probably be fired or something. Like, I don't think that either. We just got to see progress. And the progress that I'm talking about for right now during this offseason is doing exactly like what Matt Rule said he wants to do. Put together a $30 to $40 million roster. Go get the big guns. Because this year, I think we finally did let some of our young guys develop. Right? So now that they've developed, they've got that experience, get them through off season, get them a little bit bigger. They're going to mature because now they're going from ages 18, 19. They're going to be now 19, 20, 21. Your bodies just get bigger. You get more mature. Get more experience, right? You got some battle scars on you now. You got some scar tissue. You're way more ready for battle next season than you were this season. I personally think we need to have a little bit of schematic changes as well. But overall, I don't think we need to act this offseason like it was a 0-12 year. Some of the other reaction is, I usually don't like to get into it with the way former players talk about this program and stuff like that. But, there's a couple that stood out to me. And one was, and people probably know exactly who I'm talking about, but I'm not going to call out names or anything. Because I still have like a lot of respect for these guys. But, you got one guy talking about on Twitter, there's a question, and somebody's like, what do you think the issue with the defense this year was? And this person put out Tony White and Terrence Knighton are at Florida State right now. Now, look, I'm not going to say that Terrence and Tony White didn't do a good job, because they did, right? Our defenses were better. But we had just as many like gripes about their defense as we do about Butler's right now. I mean, outside of excuse me, outside of Ty and Nash, who we always keep bringing up now and want to compare 5th and 7-year seniors to redshirt freshmen and sophomores and true freshmen, we want to compare that they should be just as good as those experienced seniors. Name other good defensive linemen. Under Terrence Knighton, we still saw Cam Lenhart take a step back. We still saw Princewell and Mama Land take a step back. Elijah Judy wasn't very good. I think Elijah Judy's much better this year than he was in his previous years. Because Elijah's first year here, he never saw the field. Last year, he barely saw the field. Whenever he did, it was clearly a slack off of where Nash was. And now this year, he was much better. It wasn't always good, but I think he played much better. Also, if Terrence Knight was such a good developer, right, then why weren't the guys that stayed here ready to play? Maybe Terry Braden's job was much harder this year than what we thought it should have been in getting these guys ready to play and having them perform week in and week out. I don't know. But how can you sit here and say that, like, oh, it's because of Tony White? Look what he's doing down in Florida State with apparently better athletes than he had here at Nebraska. Dude just gave up 40 points for the 4th time this season. Like, he's not doing very well down there in Florida State either. Personally, I think if this coaching carousel wasn't so full with so many good programs, I think Florida State would have fired that coaching staff too. I think Mike Norvell got saved by the fact that they didn't want to have to go into the job fair, having to compete with Penn State, Florida, LSU, and some of the others. I don't think they wanted to compete with that because then they know they definitely would have gotten a top dude. So I think that's what saved Mike Norvell's job this year. So I think that's a bad take. Another one was talking about, there's a little clip of players doing pregame dancing, kind of getting hyped, dancing. Oh, do you remember any of us dancing back in the 90s? Yeah. Yeah, probably. I'm sure some of you guys probably were. But at the same time, things are just different. Things are just different now. Kids are different. Generations are different. We all have difference. There was things that you guys did in the 90s that the players in the 60s and 70s didn't do and probably hated that you did. There's just always those things. Generations change, things get changed. I don't think that had anything to do. And again, we always want to pick this stuff out after a loss. Do you think after our 7 wins, none of those guys were dancing before those 7 wins? Do you think there's no other team in the country that has dudes vibing during pregame warmups that are number 1 team in the nations, 2 teams, whatever, best programs going right now? You think it's just happening at Nebraska? It's the same thing with the podcast stuff. Hey, you know what? He was still doing those podcasts whenever we won our 7 games. Again, we got to be realistic and honest with our criticism. Can't just be blurting out just stupid stuff all the time. It doesn't help anybody. Let me see here. Like I said, I got all my grievances. Okay. Instead of just complaining about all this other stuff, right? I will come up with one solution. This program will not get better, and we will not return to where we want our program to get to on the national stage until our program, and this starts with Matt Rhule, decides on what our identity is as a program. Are we going to be a beat you up in the trenches type of identity? We're going to be super physical. We're going to, slow the game down, be methodical, win the game at the end of the day. Are we going to be a athletic program that's going to just be the, best show on turf type offense? Are we going to be a bend but don't break defense with that type of offense? Are we going to be a run first? Are we going to be a pro style? Are we going to we've got to pick an identity. This whole multiple stuff, being able to do multiple things, never works. What's that saying? Jack of all trades, master of none. You're never going to have that one thing that you can rely on whenever you walk into a game where there's 30-mile-an-hour winds, snow coming down, you get stuck in a rain game, get a couple bad injuries. Just one of those games that just things aren't going your way. There's nothing you can fall back on whenever you're multiple, because there's nothing that you do masterfully. We've got to pick an identity. And I think, to be honest, this is, I think, the major downfall of so far with Matt Rhule. I think whenever he first got here, he definitely had his eyes set and he knew what he wanted this program to look like. But I think that first year and being able to get Dylan here changed everything. It changed who we thought our offense needs to be, what kind of offensive coordinator we need to have here, and all that stuff. And then I think he saw, our good progression on the defensive side of the ball with Tony White's 3-3-5. But then felt like we needed to keep that, even though maybe that's really not the way to go. And I think he's kind of trying to also morph it into what he wants out of a program. And it's not gelling. It's not gelling at all. I think we just need to go back to what Matt Rule initially said he wants this program to be. He wants a hard-nosed, fighting defense, physical defense with an offense that's going to be huddle up, run, play action pass, using a fullback, using a tight end, all that kind of stuff. I personally think that works the best in the Midwest. Now, I also think you can kind of do that from running pistol formations. You can even do that out of a shotgun spread. You can still be a little aggressive like that, but you got to have the right schemes, the right play calls, the right players in place to do those type of things. And because you see that in Ohio State, Michigan is a very run heavy, pro style, play action pass offense. But right now, I think they're having their troubles because they kind of did what Nebraska did. We had a chance to get Dylan Raiola. Now we feel like, well, I mean, we can't waste a 5-star. He's very talented. He wants to go to the pros. We just can't have him hand off the ball 20 to 30 times a game. So we got to have him throw 20 to 30 times a game. But that doesn't fit the identity of what you want your program to be. So just butts heads. And I think they kind of ran into the same thing with Bryce Underwood. Well, this guy's a very dynamic athlete. He's a 5-star. We've had a chance to get him, so we did. And it doesn't really fit. Now they've had a much better year than us this year. But you also hear a lot of those complaints about, they could be better if they just let Underwood cook, So I think hands down, Rule's got to bring that back in this offseason and really make the decisions in the portal with his coaching staff, everything else on refocusing on what identity you want this team and this program to be. Or else we're just going to keep struggling and just kind of keep being that 7-5, 8-4 style team. Yeah, let's go here. So the other thing that kind of goes with the identity thing, and in a video ago after the Penn State game, I talked about this a little bit as far as this upcoming season. It's a tough schedule, all that stuff. We don't know the dates or any of that stuff when we get our buys, the dates of the games, the times of the games, obviously. But I mentioned how next season, Matt Rule, I don't want to hear you complaining, talking about schedule or when games play or the travel, any of that stuff. Because it just gives our team excuses, right? We see them all the time whenever they do the behind the scenes stuff, documentaries and everything else. He always preaches to the team, don't be victims, be alphas, don't be victims, blah, blah, blah. Well, you're kind of acting like a victim by complaining about your traveling or the times of the games or any of that stuff. I don't want to hear people that anymore. Here's the other narrative that I want Matt Rule to stop. And this is something that I've kind of thought of too myself, but I was watching the Average Joe Sports Show, and Gary Sharp brought this up, and he said it much better than I ever could, and just really kind of implanted that more in my head of like, yeah, couldn't agree more. And it's let's stop talking like every game is going to be 5-2, and it's gonna be close, and it's always gonna come down to one play, and at the end of the game, and we gotta win by three, and uh, it's every game's gonna be close, and everything's gonna be tight. No, let's pull a Kurt Signetti and say, no, we're gonna come out, we're gonna beat your ass by 100, and then we're gonna beat your ass by another 100 the next week, and then the next week, and we're gonna come out, we're gonna beat everybody. Like, we need to have that type of mentality of like, put your foot on the throat of your opponents and go out and just put pedal to the metal and beat their ass. Win by 50 every time you're out. That should be your goal. Not just do enough on offense or do enough on defense just to barely win because it's going to be a close game. That narrative needs to change. And I don't know if Matt always just does that initially because, the old saying of you lose by a lot before you can lose by a little, and then you can win by a little before you can win by a lot. So I don't know if that's kind of like his thing of like, look, right now we're struggling with one-score games, so I'm going to keep preaching that we can win one-score games, and these games are going to be tough, so I got to get them mentally ready for that. I don't know if that was his thought process or if he just always thinks that. Maybe it would change after a couple years. Maybe that messaging was going to change. I'm not sure, but regardless if it was or not, it needs to for next year. Just get that out of their heads that it's always going to be close. Go out there and be confident enough and cocky enough that you're going to go on and beat a team's ass by 50 points every game. That's what I want to see. And then the last thing, and this is something that I hear a lot about, and it's been going on for years, and it's been a gripe of mine for a long time. And you can even ask any of my family members because I will complain about this. I'll bring this up all the time, every year. And it's the whole narrative that Nebraska can't get the talent here. Yes, we can. We did before. So why can't we get the talent now? The only difference is right now, we've been on a historically bad run. Terrible. We haven't been winning. So we got to start winning. And I think, again, with the Matt Rule doing the podcast, getting on Pat McAfee, doing all these different things, I think what he's trying to do is he's trying to, in a PR way, get ahead of that so you can get athletes in here to help you start winning. And then recruiting becomes even easier on trying to get the top players in the nation to your program. I always heard people talk about, well, it's the weather. Okay, I'm sorry. I forgot all the tropical weather that Columbus, Ohio gets. How about Ann Arbor? Yeah. I know they never have cold weather games. Nah. How about Penn State up there in Happy Valley? Yeah, they don't have a problem getting people there. Like, these are nonsense things that just for whatever reason, like Nebraska fans love to like self-deprecate on who we are as people, who we are as a state, what we think people think about this area. It's just, I hate that argument. Hate it. Yes, because we see it. I hear it all the time. Like different people going, and look, we'll never get like a top 5 talent here. Like we'll never be our roster will never be part of like a top 5 roster in the nation. Why? Why can't it? Right now, no, but we're not winning. We got to start building and developing and winning. Once we start getting to 8, 9 wins, 10 wins, start making a presence on the national stage, getting ranked in the top 15 maybe every once in a while. Yeah. We've got a charismatic, we've got good assistants. We've got all the amenities that you could ever want. And now if Rhule's right and he's now got the full money backing, yeah. Why couldn't we get the right type of players here? Of course we can. It's such a dumb argument. I don't understand really where people come from with that. Outside of just like, again, it comes from the same people that I had talked about in previous things where it's like they almost live for this program being bad. Maybe it's not that. It's not that they live for the program being bad, but it's like their default, right? They don't want to have that fall. They don't want to be all Kool-Aid bought in and then have that fall, right? So instead, they put up like this wall of hate and sense of this everything sucks. Don't you know this all sucks? It's never going to get better type of attitude to prevent themselves from feeling anything. And I think that's where it comes from. That's where arguments like that come from. And it's dumb. Okay. It is. It's dumb. We can get players here and we've done it before. And you're starting to see it now, like I said, with the 27 class. All right. But yeah, that's my grievances. I'd be remiss though if I didn't say tonight was the volleyball selection show. Nebraska got the number 1 seed overall, so they're going to be hosting all the way through. And their first quadrant or the first game is going to be against Long Island University, and they'll play on Friday night. So going to try to keep up with them. Won't do like I said, I'm going to kind of do maybe once a week shows whenever it comes to volleyball, men's and women's basketball. Try to talk a little bit of wrestling in there and that kind of stuff. I am going to do a show probably on Friday to try to talk a little bit of recruiting and any other kind of news that we're seeing from people entering portals or whatever else may be coming up. Because I think you're going to start seeing people do they intend to enter the transfer portal, because you can't officially do it until January 2nd, but you're going to have everybody putting that out, the info that they're going to be going into it, so then they can get ahead on recruitment and get their name out there and start having the back channels do all the negotiating. So then the process, once January hits, you can go real quick, you can get enrolled, and then you're part of winter conditioning as soon as the semester begins early January. So I think we're going to start getting popped with a ton of news. Of course, next Sunday is selection show, so we'll know exactly what bowl game we're going to. So then probably, like I said, I'll do probably a show on Saturday or on Friday. I might do a show then on Sunday or Monday to talk about what happened over the weekend with both the women's matches and volleyball. And then, of course, talk about what bowl we're going to and maybe kind of preview that a little bit. But yeah, again, that was my grievance stuff. Again, we'll probably do weekly shows where maybe I'll talk about different topics, because who knows what's going to happen all season long. Are we going to have coaching changes? Are we going to have big news of big players leaving? Are we going to hear about big news about big players coming back? We're going to find out. It's going to be a crazy couple months here with Nebraska news, and I'm going to be here to try to talk about it and cover it all and give a man's perspective on all this stuff. Again, if you guys kind of like what I'm talking about or love to hate what I'm talking about, please hit the subscribe button. It would really help me out. Hit the like button, leave a comment, leave me some comments if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Please leave a comment. It helps. Share this out on your socials. Go to my X account right there. That's my account, BRN Pod 25. Yeah, hit me up. Follow me there too. I'll take followers there on X as well. But anyway, guys, like always, go Big Red, and we'll see you next time.